Hello, hello, hello. I am live and streaming and hopefully streaming on YouTube and also on LinkedIn. So if you are on any of those channels and you want to join in the conversation, then please pick the channel of your preference. So today I wanted to talk about visibility, of course. I wanted to share some unusual ways to be seen. And they're probably not the ways that you're normally taught when it comes to being visible, when it comes to raising your professional profile. So if you are looking down there and thinking, hey, who is this person here? Yes, I'm Jenny Kovacs. Yes, I'm a visibility queen. Yes, I'm known as the queen of being seen. And yes, I do this because I know firsthand how important it is for you as a professional, for you as an individual, for you as a business owner, and even for you as an organization to be able to raise your professional profile. And I do this in lots of different ways. However, I'm really passionate about this topic just because I know what it feels like to be passed over. I know what it feels like to have a crisis of confidence and think, I can't do this. And I also know and hear a lot of what it feels like in terms of frustration of wanting to raise your professional profile, wanting to put your work or your business out there and feeling like you're not being seen and not being heard by the people you want to. Incredibly frustrating. So I start with an apology this week. You'll notice that I'm scratching the back of my hand and I'm doing it under here. No, it's not a nervous tick. I've been bitten. I've been bitten about 7 times on the back of this hand by a horsefly, it seems, in my sleep, and a number of times on this hand. And even though I try not to scratch, which you shouldn't do, you'll see me doing that. So I just get that out the way up front. So today has been such I want to say a blessed day, which sounds a bit trite. However, it really has. Given what we've experienced in the last, even here in the UK in the last few days, let alone the last week, there's been a time of ultimate change. We've got a new Prime Minister in, and all of the shenanigans that come alongside that in the lead up to that. It has sparked change, we hope, for the British public. Also, the British public and the world lost the Queen Elizabeth II just very recently, just in case you hadn't heard. But the impact of that can be far-reaching, from general sadness of losing somebody who's been in the backdrop of their life for all of our lives. In fact, for many of us, Queen Elizabeth is the only person we've known. Also, it has stirred up lots of different feelings. I'll leave you to troll through the internet to find out the feelings that it has evoked for lots of different people. But it also has been a really great opportunity for you as a professional, for you as a leader, to really model what it's like to be a leader, to have a very long career for such a long time. As leaders, as professionals, as we put ourselves out there, even more in some instances, we can sometimes get it right. We can sometimes get it wrong. We can sometimes make mistakes. We can sometimes worry about saying the wrong thing, and perhaps we do say the wrong thing. We've seen that in many of our leaders, across, especially politics is a really good smorgasbord of sometimes when people get it right and wrong. So today I wanted to share 9 unusual ways to be seen, 9 unusual ways to be more visible, whether you are a professional who's quite senior in your role, whether you're at kind of board level, whether you are aspiring to be a leader, whether you are having to take a sidestep or a downstep for whatever reason that is. And, if you're really looking to enhance that in raising your profile in your career, I hope that these tips will be handy and helpful. Now, scratching aside, you will see me look down as I thought that was silent. That's the first alarm that's gone off, so I'll change that now. You'll see me look down. I've just got some notes. Literally, I say notes, words. I have 9 words which help me to stay on track. I'll be mindful of the time. I'll look at the timer here and look at you there in the eye sometimes, and other times I'll kind of be thinking and looking all over the place. If this is really, really distracting for you, I apologize, but stay with me because the message is strong. And as I say, if you are not really supposed to be watching this right now at work on LinkedIn, maybe sneak over to YouTube and do it there. Maybe do it there. Not that I told you to do that. Most of all, I spend a lot of time getting these ready, collating and curating, sorry, the content on here. I do it because I hear of your struggles. Sometimes we get to speak one-on-one in a conversation and you tell me what your struggles are. And I will never name and shame anyone that I've ever spoken to, but I will pull out some juicy nuggets that I can share with you on here. So in return, I ask if you find anything that I say helpful on here, please feel free to share it with your teams. Please feel free to share it with your work colleagues or your friends or your business besties. And also, please do comment. I do always go back after the broadcast and respond to every single comment. So whether you're commenting on YouTube or on LinkedIn, please do add comments. Generally speaking, I tend to share the comments verbally so that people know what's been shared. I won't share your name or who you are unless you specifically ask me to. And also, just in case you're not aware, I can't see you. You can be watching me on screen, but I can't actually see you. You can see me. So if you're watching this on LinkedIn, I'd love you to just send me a connection request and let's connect on here. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I would love you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, because despite having the channel for many years, I've decided to actively start to grow my YouTube channel. And when you subscribe, any nuggets of information that I share, you get access to first, and you're able to watch them at your leisure, after work, at the weekend, or whenever it suits you as well. So all of that to say, let's jump into these unusual ways that I'd written about. So first of all, let's acknowledge the change. And I really believe in acknowledging what's happening. I don't believe in like throwing glitter over things, burying our head in the sand. It doesn't serve us, and eventually, a bit like when you're bobbing apples in water, if you push it down, it will jump up somewhere else, sometimes where you least expect it, sometimes where you don't want it to. And often, as I hear from people on a regular basis, almost daily basis, it has the ability to derail you. So let me share some tips that will help. So the first thing when it comes to change, when we're hearing about change, different people react differently. Different people hear things from a different place. Therefore, what can sometimes happen is some people will feel happy about the change. Some people will feel relief. Some people will feel anger. Some people will be in denial. You will go through, and everybody goes through different change. Now, even if you work for the same organization and have been privy to the same information, you might find that three people hearing the news one could be upset, another one could be in denial, another one could be ecstatic, and someone else could be angry. You see this in organizations, especially when they announce redundancies and things like that, how some people kind of don't care or seemingly don't care, and some people are really upset, they're inconsolable, and some people get angry. So what I would love to encourage you to do, especially as a leader, especially as a professional, even if you're a professional in your own business, and especially if you're a professional in your own business, is to acknowledge how that person is feeling. If you are responsible for them, there's no point you burying your head in the sand. There's no point you negating how they feel. If somebody tells you, I feel really angry at this, do not tell them that they don't feel angry, that they must be making it up. You can't meet somebody's emotion or the way they feel and tell them that they don't feel it, because they are experiencing it, they are living it. Even if it seems wildly out of kilter for you, please don't do that. Acknowledge them. And I remember going back many years ago to my days of financial services, where after redundancies were made, how differently people reacted. And I think I actually learned this from going back a few decades in customer services. If somebody is angry and they are voicing their anger, sometimes you just have to let it all come out. Allow them to let it all come out. Allow them to acknowledge the anger. Allow them to acknowledge that they are where they are. Don't try and squash it back in their mouth, because it's not going to end well. So as a good leader, as a professional, as somebody who is looking to be more seen for who they are, acknowledge anger. When it comes to change, acknowledge anger. So that's number one. Number two is communicate, 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 especially in times of change. When there is a bigger overarching change happening, sometimes underneath that can be lots of little things that change. Sometimes we know in advance that they're going to change, and other times we just don't. It could be minute by minute, hour by hour, update by update. Your job as a visible leader, as a visible person who is being seen and heard, as a stronger communicator, because I believe no matter how great we are with communications, we can always learn, always do more. Your job is to keep on communicating, continuously communicate. Now, I had very first-hand experience of this, and I may have shared it in another live, but I'll share it again for the context that we're talking about here. I remember I was one of many in an organisation who was put on notice for redundancy. We had 90 days. And whilst it was a shock for some, a surprise for others, other people kind of thought, well, this could be inevitable. The thing that I remember about that being a very, very positive experience, given that we were all, technically speaking, losing our jobs, was the fact that the board communicated every single day from Monday to Friday, the same time of day. We'd be called into a huddle, everybody in the building, regardless of their seniority or whether they were junior members of staff, and somebody from the board would give them an update. And sometimes those updates would sound like, there's nothing more to report than what we told you about yesterday. We're hoping that we'll hear about this thing or X or Y tomorrow, but at the moment it's still the same. But we are just communicating that nothing else has changed yet, and just finding out whether anybody has got any questions, anybody wants to talk about this, anybody wants to know anything that we can share. Okay, so communicate, communicate, communicate. Keep on communicating. Keep those lines of communication open. And this I've seen is also a really top thing in terms of keeping the lines of communication open when people are having difficult conversations. So thing number one, acknowledge anger. Don't try and squash it or tell people they don't feel how they feel. Number two, communicate, communicate, communicate. Number three, and again, really great for change, is work in partnership, work in collaboration. Now, I get that you might feel this is totally inappropriate if you are, the human resources director, and it's coming from, the junior sales team. But actually, when you work in partnership with other people, especially in an organization where different people have different genders, maybe they work in silos, maybe they work very differently, it's a bit like you all being on a boat and rowing. And this is an analogy that a mentor of mine used to talk about quite a lot. When you're all in a boat rowing, it only takes one person to, quite literally stick their oar in, and it makes the boat rock, shake, or anything else. So when you work in partnership, in collaboration, sometimes it will be as simple as checking that everyone's okay with the rowing, checking that everyone's rowing in the same direction. If someone's tired, maybe them to get their oar in, so that the rest of the team can take the strain, or vice versa. So having a collaborative approach, or participating together, is going to be something that's going to help you through change. And as we saw last week, when the government or the party decided to elect a new prime minister, after all the bickering and squabbling and everything else that went into the run-up of the event, my personal opinion only, it would be great now that everybody pulls together, they all collaborate, and kind of go for the common good, go for their North Star, go for the things that can unite them as a team. And this is exactly the same in an organization. And sometimes, while all around the world are losing their head, it could be that you're the person that comes in and pulls everyone together, one by one, person by person, department by department, post by post. That person could be you. If you're doing that for the common good, that would be great. So the first three things are around change. So acknowledge anger, communicate, communicate, communicate. And the third one, collaborate and form partnership. Okay. So the next three that I wanted to talk about were and are all around grief. And given the grief that a lot of people are expressing, and experiencing through the nation, I recognise that these are sometimes some of the strongest elements that you can bring in within an organisation, within a governing body, within your business, whether you're a one-man band business or a founder with, a couple of freelancers or a small team. And even if you're like one of my people that follows me, maybe you've written a book or you're a speaker and you are one man or one woman band business, and you are looking to really sort of show your expertise, be taken seriously, raise your profile and put yourself out there, and it's just you, all of this still applies, because whoever you're collaborating with, speaking to, will need to know the next thing. So I thought I would talk about grief and sometimes the role that it plays within an organisation and the day-to-day kind of operational running of an organisation. So the first thing I wanted to share, in fact, just before I share that first thing, I once worked for an organisation where somebody went through something very difficult. Okay, let's just say they went off on maternity leave and didn't come back with a baby. This is something that happens to a lot of families around the UK and around the world. And it's something that people are often scared to talk about. Now, I'm not talking about oversharing, saying too much or anything else like that. But one of the things that we can do as a leader is to understand when somebody is in a period of grief. It could be something that's, personal circumstances. It's really important to be able to sit with the stillness within them. What do I mean by that? Very rarely actually do people ask, and I know that they're often concerned about breaking protocol, HR or something like that. So do check with your HR department what you can and can't do. I'm not giving HR advice here. But if you're in a position where you get to sit with somebody, and I think specifically when they're going through grief, one of the things I think that perpetuates grief, having experienced it, of course, myself, as well as seeing it in others, is this feeling that somehow the scenario or the person will be forgotten. So when you bowl into a room and you see that person and you think, I'm not going to mention anything, I'm not going to say anything, and you don't acknowledge that, or you can't sit in silence alongside with them and hold that space and support them, then actually it's very difficult for the person to process or to navigate or to move through that grief. So it's really, really important that you are able to sit with them. And I know that I've had that done with me, and it was amazing. It was an amazing experience to be, even though I was the person going through the grief. So learn how to sit in stillness with the person who needs it, even in a work environment, because it will mean so much and it will really help them to process what they need to process. So the next thing is listen. And at this point, I have to give a shout out to SANS, one of my most favourite charities, although there are a lot of non-profits and charities that I support, because I think they do this so well. They deal with quite a difficult topic. And not only do they support people going through whatever they need for SANS, in this case, unfortunately, the experience of losing a baby or losing a pregnancy, They also do a lot of campaigning. They also do a lot of research, which helps the outcomes. And in fact, the time that I've known them, since 2010 to today, when I first became aware of SANS, they were helping save the lives of 17 babies that could die a day. And that figure, I hope I don't misquote them, has now gone down, I think, to 14. It might even be lower. Check their website and you'll see. So it could be that they are listening, it could be that they are researching, it could be that they are campaigning or lobbying in or within the government. Either way, SANS have got this situation sorted. With the passing of the Queen, for some people, they will be upset and you might not understand their upset. And it might be something to do with the passing and nothing to do with the passing. So many people, when they're going through any form of grief, and don't buy into the baloney that, oh, you'll be all right in a month's time or in a year's time. Everyone has their own timeline and their different path. But if somebody is really needing that support, being listened to is the thing that is going to be the most helpful. Okay. When something like this happens, then sometimes that can stack on top of a loss. So if somebody's already experienced loss, and to give you a real example, I heard of somebody's passing that morning. So then by the end of that day, kind of sandwiched around my day was then hearing of the passing of the Queen. It can trigger emotions. I know that word gets overused a lot, but it can really trigger emotions. It can make you think of the loved ones in your own life that have passed recently, a decade ago, 2 or 3 decades ago. You know, some of you, it might remind you of loss of grandparents, of parents, of children, of something else. So what I'm saying is, don't be surprised when a loss can stack on top of a loss. And I mean it when I say you could literally lose your purse and it could trigger the sorts of emotions that came up when you lost a loved one or a relative. Don't be surprised by that. Our job is to listen. And I think SANS do this so beautifully. Yeah, I love that comment. Holding space for people going through grief is important. It means so much more than words. Absolutely. Because it is with no irony that so many people that work with me, the kind of common denominator underneath all the work is, but what should I say? So for people who care and take so much effort and time for others and want to know, well, what do I say? Sometimes it really is about, and I love that comment, well, what do I not say? You know, and silence can be really golden. And if you've got the ability to listen and hold that space for somebody, it can make an incredible, incredible difference. It's knowing when to speak and when to shut up. Okay, so that's the second tip. And the consolation bit, know how to console somebody. Sometimes people can feel like they're literally, it's too much, they're being smothered with too much information. And then other times it can feel like, well, people around me don't care. So it is a balancing act, I agree. If you're not sure, ask the person. And again, I go back to quite a few decades ago when I was working in financial services, in banking and mortgages, to be precise. And I remember going through kind of like a medical intervention, which makes it sound very dramatic. It wasn't. And the thing that I was always struck by, my team leader at the time was always very compassionate. You know, always used to ask me how I was doing. Not, oh, how are you doing today? Anyway, but like, how are you doing? Like, really, how are you doing? And gave me kind of free license in this space where, you know, we're supposed to go to work and, you know, act a certain way, which I did, but also gave me the space that if I was in pain, or if I was feeling uncomfortable and needed to go, that I had full permission to do it. So what they did was they were able to kind of console, if you like, and consult before it became a need. There were no dramatic outbursts. There was nothing going at work. And I felt completely supported and completely held. And I know that many of you have the ability to do the same in your business. So I'm going to read your comment in a second. So this is really, really important. So if the thing, just to recap, if you're going through, or your team or your organization is going through change, acknowledge people's anger. Yes, there's lots of other things to acknowledge as well, but acknowledge their anger. Don't try and poo-poo it or claim that it didn't happen, or, well, I don't feel like that, you shouldn't. That's kind of gaslighting, really. Number 2, communicate, communicate, communicate. Keep on communicating. Number 3, be collaborative, like have a collaborative partnership approach with that. You will get more done. You're all rowing in the same direction. Thing number 4, especially if somebody is upset or in some kind of grief, which redundancies or threat of redundancies, by the way, can bring that on. Anniversaries of redundancy, survivor syndrome, which you would have heard of. All of that can bring in those emotions. Sit in the stillness with them, or have somebody who can within the organization sit in the stillness with the person. Listen to them. Let them talk, even if they're rambling, even if they're upset, even, God forbid, if they should cry and be visibly upset. Sometimes you just need to sit with that, and just hold that space for them. And one of the comments here is definitely, I've spent so much time over the last few days thinking about all of the people who are close to me that have passed, often way before their time. I completely agree with that. And it's interesting because I didn't just think about myself, I thought of other people. Excuse me. It was important to me, take a sip of water. It's important to me that despite deciding to carry on and continue with the event on YouTube that I ran, the Optimize Your Career event on Friday, of which I had 2 awesome speakers that shared each 2 segments as well. It felt important to carry on with that, but it also felt important to acknowledge what had happened and what had gone on. Otherwise, I just think it would have just been plain strange to not acknowledge what was going on. And I felt really sensitive about it, not just because there was this kind of global sensitivity around the world, kind of emulating from the UK, but also because I was very mindful that a loss, such a big global loss, would definitely be bringing up things for all sorts of people, and I expected to see less people show up for the event. I expected less people to catch up. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I've decided the best thing that I can do is allow people more time. So you've got more time to access that. But the point that I want to make is that these, sometimes a loss does stack on top of another loss, and that can be really upsetting for the person who's going through that as well. So even though you've got one kind of global grief thing happening here, be very aware of what it's bringing up for other people as well right now, that might seemingly have nothing to do with work or with the current environment or the passing of the Queen or anything else like that. Be very, very sensitive to that. Okay, so as a professional who is being visible, another unusual way that might not be kind of spoken out loud is to discern what to share and what not to share. This is definitely a time to look at the too much information share, but not from a point of, am I making myself look silly because I'm sharing too much information? But coming from a place of, is this relevant to share? Is this helpful to share? And how do you decide to do that? You think to yourself, this is what I want to say. You take a pause. If you're in a conversation with somebody, you can pause and say, I'm just going to think whether this is a relevant share or not. As easy as that. Or sit for a few seconds silence. You can pause in a conversation for up to 9 seconds without it seeming strange. If I was to do that here, which I bet some of you wish, take a sip of water, Jenny, take a breath. If you're listening to this in the background and you're writing, and I share for 9 seconds or pause for 9 seconds, you're either going to think, oh my gosh, did that just stop there? Did it freeze? Did I lose Jenny? Is she okay? Did she forget what she was going to say? But I bet you one of the things that you did do when that happened was you looked up. You kind of leant forward, you leaned in, you leant forward, you listened. So it's likely actually that sometimes that pause can be enough to give you space to think. And by the way, I did pause for 9 seconds there. Will give you time to think, is this something that's going to be helpful to share? Is it or not? And the place to decide to share from, as I say, is if this is going to be beneficial to this conversation. So if somebody says to you, like I'm looking at the comments, if somebody says to you, oh my gosh, over the last few days, I've just spent so much time thinking about all the people who are close to me in my life and, who have passed away too soon. And my first retort to that is, it's funny that you should say that. I was thinking the same thing. Did you know that I have just now taken them out of their process? And a good leader, a good professional recognizes the time to speak and the time to be quiet. Okay, we don't always get it right. Sometimes we get it wrong, and you can rectify that, but recognizing that is really going to be helpful. So finally, number 8, if you step up into something, sometimes it will be uncomfortable. Sometimes it is literally putting your head above the parapet. Sometimes it's being the only person to not look away, not turn a blind eye, not kind of do the, me, that's down to someone else, not passing the buck. And sometimes it will feel uncomfortable. And I tell you all of that. I wish I could tell you there was a magic trick so it didn't feel so uncomfortable. And there's certainly tools and techniques that I share in the Superhuman program, which really help you to kind of ride the waves of that. But ultimately, at some point, it will feel uncomfortable, but it will feel doable. It will feel like you can cope with it. Stepping up will sometimes feel uncomfortable. It's something that we need to navigate and need to know that it happens and get used to it and still do regardless. Okay. So I'm not going to kind of like sugarcoat it and say, oh yeah, so once you've thought about it, it won't feel uncomfortable. Once you know the right thing to say, it won't feel uncomfortable, because that's not the truth. And sometimes, stepping up and doing that and being the visible leader is uncomfortable. Sometimes you're having to say something that's maybe not too popular. Sometimes you're having to say something that people will disagree with. And sometimes you're having to introduce an idea that you haven't, like nobody else has heard it yet. So it's going to be like, what? When you think about the fact that people thought the earth was flat, can you imagine being the very first person to say out loud, I've discovered the earth is actually round? Can you imagine people looking at you like, what? What are you talking about? So sometimes stepping up and being visible as a leader, as a professional, as an organization, as the person at the front of the ship that was ship, as in boat, can be uncomfortable. But just do it with your difference and do it with authenticity. And finally, this kind of ties up everything that I've shared of these 9 unusual ways. Last Tuesday, I was very honoured to be able to share some of this visibility work with the Diverse Business Network. And somebody asked me a question about sharing like too much. And if you think about what we've covered, things like, is it TMI? Is it too much information? Stepping up and being uncomfortable, being able to listen or sit with people as we needed to, and being able to keep communicating, acknowledging anger. One of the threads, the visibility threads that pulls that all together, is your ability to share from the scar and not the wound, which is unusual tip number 9. In the last week, you see where people are ranting and unhappy with things. And it's not to say that being unhappy is wrong and being happy is right. It's not to say that ranting is wrong and being reasonable is right. It's not to say that rambling's wrong and being, very articulate is right. It's to say that if you feel like a certain way about something and you're in the wound of it all, there's blood dripping and you're just like not ready for it, that's not the thing to share. It really is as simple as that. but you need to be self-aware enough to check in with your emotions. There are lots of things on this planet that can make us angry. There are lots of things on this planet that are unjust, and different people gravitate towards different topics. There's perfectly room for us to fight. But the place to share that from is the scar. So you can still see it, you still know it's there. And hopefully these bites that I've got will be scars in a different memory that I can speak about. But while I'm in the absolutely incessant itching and scratching of them, that is not the time to make the share. Why? Because you can't always be as articulate as you want to be. You can't always explain, because when you're in the wound, when people are questioning you, cross-questioning you on something, you could breathe fire on them. But when you're in the scar, you'll be able to stand back and say, I simply don't agree. This is not what I'm saying, and hold that conversation in a completely different way. So, number 9, share from the scar, not the wound. If you've missed any of these or just hopped on and thought, what is she talking about? Feel free just to click play, and you'll be able to go back, watch the replay. I go through all 9 points. I give lots of very in-depth examples, and you'll be able just to pick those up again if you've missed any. And a top tip for you, if you are time poor and want to watch this back, I would suggest that you hop over to YouTube, watch it on YouTube, and before you do it, change the playback speed to 1.25, or if you can take it, 1.75, or double it. Where I know I'll speak a lot quicker and I'll probably sound a bit like this, but you'll be able to hear everything in a lot shorter space of time. Okay. Thank you so much for your comments. I will make sure that I come back and comment to all of you. And remember, if you are watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Please share. It could be with your children, it could be with your co-workers, it could be with your peers, it could be with your board. It doesn't matter who you share it to, but there's so many nuggets of information in this message that I really wanted to share it today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for supporting my work. Bye for now.